Privasec is essentially split into two teams. We've got the red team, which provides everything from penetration testing, ethical hacking, right through to drone hacking. And then we have the Privasec GRC team, which is the governance, risk and compliance team, which deals with anything from security governance, strategies, risk mitigation, risk assessment and compliance. So some of the risk assessments or risk frameworks that we look at are things like PCI DSS, which is the payment card industry, the data security standard, which looks at ensuring data is safely secured, accepted, transmitted and stored across any cardholder or credit card transaction. We look at things like ISO 27001, which is an international standard on how to manage information security. We look at the ISM, which is the Information Security Manual, which outlines the cybersecurity framework. And we also look at this across different industries as well. So right from health through to banking, financial services, and defense. And so I sit within the organization as a senior GRC consultant, so senior governance, risk and compliance consultant. And that's what sort of my daily job looks like. I guess you could say the short of it is that in one corner, you've got penetration testing, which is viewing your network, your application, your device, and your physical security through the eyes of a bad actor. And this could be someone that is a lone hacker. It could be a group of hackers. It could be people working together. And penetration testing, it discovers the organization's security vulnerability. So you could say the hacker could they'll know when to target you. They'll know specifically how to target you. And the penetration testing team looks at, specifically why they might target you, how they're going to target you, if your defense tactics that are already in place are working or not, and the possible magnitude of this breach. And then in the other corner, you've got the red teaming. And so red team operations have really narrowed objectives, very controlled, multifaceted objectives. And they use a bit of a simultaneous approach that involves multiple people, multiple resources, and they have a lot of time as well, or a specific set amount of time to really dig deep and to look into these, the risk levels and the vulnerabilities across your organization. And this looks at it against technology, human, physical assets. And they take their time as well because they want to avoid detection. So, from this, I could probably say that a really entertaining way of looking at it is saying that pen testers are like pirates. They like to kind of rampage whenever they want to, attacking your network, whereas red teamers are more like ninjas. They're very stealthy. They have very controlled planning approaches. Our last red team actually succeeded due to a vishing attempt against an employee. So vishing is voice and phishing combined. So they posed as an IT person, an IT support person, and they managed to get two-factor authentication tokens over the phone using a known password. And eventually this led to a full compromise of the environment. For a financial client, they actually tested a bank branch overseas and managed to pivot from laptops which were connected to the general manager's PC. And this was through the bank's anti-laundering database server. And this was just because of bad policies and overall lack of data security. So lots of information from the customers were actually scattered throughout the environment. And you could actually gain access through 90% of the environment. So the team that was actually involved in coordinating and the phishing email campaigns discovered that there was just a basic lack of hygiene across the network. So people were still clicking on unknown sources. People within the internal institution were also forwarding these emails across to other employees who were also clicking on the emails as well. So it still showed us that people are the weakest link within a lot of these organizations. Yeah. It depends on the company. For red teamers themselves, they have minimal interaction with the client afterwards, only because they don't like to mention the specifics of the activity, who was involved in what, and how they went about things. They've had clients that are really anxious about certain issues as well, and other clients that really don't care. It just depends on the operations and the risk business appetite of the particular organization. I would say that most of the time, what drives change is maybe the brand or the business themselves, and particularly if there is a CISO involved. And a CISO is a Chief Information Security Officer, so someone who sits above the rest of the analysts and reports directly into the CEO. If it's not a CISO, it might be, say, the head of security, and if they're very involved, particularly with the testing, then potentially they're the ones that will drive change. So recently we did a penetration testing that found an issue was reported about 5 years ago by a member of the public that did a different penetration. It was someone who did a pen test from a different firm, not Privasec. And the issue actually was that they were able to pull down names, passwords, and full details of people and their logins, and the system never actually got fixed. So Privasec was able to step in and say, actually, we can help you fix this. So in terms of the denial, the base of this actually stems from being able to handle the situation, this institute actually being able to educate within their organization and their business, right from, the top right through right down and into the employees. So this was actually a banking institute, quite a high, well-known particular bank. And the team internally were actually able to, they were the ones that made themselves compromised. And so they had to internally relay that education and figure out how they were going to do a lot of just basic security awareness and training. A lot of the time, it depends on what the vulnerability is. There are a lot of solutions in the market depending on size. So you could have something really small and out of the box solution, which might only cost $100, right through to something that can cost thousands of dollars and take months to implement. Most of the time, if it's just a patching issue, it can actually be done internally. So the vendor or the client themselves will actually have a patch for something like that. But sometimes, a lot of the issue actually happens because the client themselves don't apply the patch on time, and that's what leads them more to a vulnerability that we need to mitigate. I would say generally no, but it's not just the financial services. This is across all industries as well. And why not? Probably because it's too technical and in a format that they don't understand. So as a result of this, and as a result of just research in general, regulations and standards across all industries are changing so that things are not too technical, so that people can get cyber risks. They understand vulnerabilities, mitigations, threats, even the buzzwords as well. What are they? What do they mean? So executives now are actually made responsible for cyber risks within their organization, and particularly within financial services. And that's because they're regulated through APRA, and APRA is the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority. And this can really be seen through what has now been introduced as APRA CPS 234, which actually aims to ensure that any APRA regulated entity takes measures to be resilient against information security, and that includes cyber attacks. So this is basically enabling organizations to maintain cybersecurity capabilities within their organization as well, so that they can have a level of standard against their information security and be mitigated from threats and vulnerabilities.